Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon there in the Philippines. This afternoon, I'm going to present to you the speech and language impairments. So many were able to discuss already on the different impairments that many of our young generations had been suffering. Um, I am going to share my screen right now. Okay. Now let me present in slideshow. There you go. So as what I've said, I am going to present to discuss about students with speech and language disorders or impairments. It's not moving. Okay. The development of this field started from the 19th century, um, which were studies were conducted with individuals who were deaf and those who stuttered. Then the US were able to publish a book about speech and language impairment in 1802. Then organizations for speech therapies were developed in the early 1900s. And this early speech therapy only focused on the production of speech, while in the current situations, we stress on communication now. Now, research shows that more than 1 million students who received special education services under the Individual with Disabilities Act in public schools and are served under the category of speech or language impairments. So this number is from the US. In reality, because many disabilities do impact individuals' ability to communicate and receive speech or language related services, the actual number of children served is much higher. Now let's take a closer look at the actual definition of speech and language impairment. From IDEA, it means that it is a communication disorder such as stuttering, impaired articulation, language impairment, or a voice impairment that adversely affects a child's educational performance. So communication, when you exchange information and knowledge among participants, it requires a message, a sender, a receiver, and a channel. Communication requires interaction between the sender and the receiver. On the language part, it is the system of symbols that individuals use for communication. It can be expressive language and it can be receptive language. When you say expressive, you are the one expressing your thoughts. While receptive, you are accepting or receiving the communication. Now, there are 5 components of language. We have phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. So with the form, we have phonology, morphology, and syntax, while semantics is the content and pragmatic is the function. So when you say phonology, morphology, syntax, here you have how you say the word, how the sounds are made, morphology, and syntax is still how words are made. and how it what it meant is in semantics, and pragmatics is on how the language is being understood or being used, whether it is discourse, it is argument, or um, and many other purposes. Here are the different language disorders. First is specific language impairment, language delay, aphasia, central auditory processing disorder. So, and here the dimensions of speech, which involves the voice, which have the pitch, intensity, and the quality of the voice that you make, the resonance, whether it's low or high, the articulation on how you say words, and the fluency, how words are being articulated properly. So speech disorders can occur in all of these areas. 19% of all students receiving special education, this is in America, and slightly more boys than girls. Does not include students who receive speech and language therapy as a related service. So what are the causes of speech and language disorders? So here are the different causes, which are caused by biological causes, and it can be environmental causes. The first one is, wait a minute, biological causes. So more on the coming from the person itself. So physical causes, emotional causes, brain injury, hereditary, hearing loss, developmental delays, brain injury, mental retardation, autism, cerebral palsy, neurological disorder, muscular disorders, and some of the environmental causes, which is very sad if this has been happening with one of your students. It can be neglect or abuse, poverty or malnutrition, drug abuse, vocal abuse, or misuse. So here are the symptoms of and signs of speech and language impairment. Let's take a closer look at the actual definition. I mean, the symptoms. One of the important things that you need to, as a teacher, we need to know what are the symptoms and the signs that we need to be aware of when our when it comes to observing students. So for students with speech and language impairments, they have difficulties with vocabulary, sight words, decoding, and comprehension. They have difficulty in writing down thoughts. It means they could not write what they think. Difficulties with abstract ideas. So it means it needs to be specified, and the broader ideas needs to be chopped into smaller ones. Fluency impairment. It means they could not read well or they could not speak well properly. And also, I skipped this slide. There is an interruption in the flow of rhythm of rhythm of speech, such as stuttering. There is articulation or phonological disorders. There is improper use of words and their meanings. They are not able to express their ideas, their vocabulary is lesser, and they have inadequate social skills. We will find out why they have inadequate social skills as I continue my report. Types of speech disorders. So here are the types of speech disorders, which refers to difficulties producing speech sounds or problems with voice quality. First one is articulation, on how you say words or sounds. So speech impairments where the child produces sounds incorrectly. Example, list, they are having difficulty with the L, it becomes R. So it can be, so one of the important things to understand that there are multiple types of speech disorders and multiple types of language disorders, and they affect individuals in many different ways. So when I'm talking about speech disorders, we are referring to difficulties producing speech, speech sound or voice quality. So as what I've said, first one is trouble with articulation. So this is where the child produces sounds incorrectly. They may have hard time pronouncing several certain sounds. So if our students would change the example, one child would say, instead of dalawa, it becomes dawaya, or from tatlo, it becomes tatyo. So those are, actually, it's rarely that you could say that that is one of the symptom, because most of the little ones would have what do you call it? They are going to interchange letters with those like L to Y, but this one, that the example that is being given here is from L to R. They also have a fluency impairment where the child's flow of speech is disrupted by sounds, syllables, and words that are repeated, prolonged, or avoided. So here, speech impairment, fluency, speech impairment where a child's flow of speech is disrupted with sounds and syllables and words that are repeated, prolonged, or avoided, that and were there, maybe silent blocks or inappropriate inhalation, exhalation, or phonation patterns. And finally, they have voice disorder. So this speech impairment is where the child's voice has an abnormal quality to its speech, resonance, or loudness. So here are the types of language disorders. So it refers to the impairments in the ability to understand or use words in context, both verbally and non-verbally. The first one of the language disorder is expressive. So we have three, actually. We have receptive, expressive, and mixed. So both receptive and expressive. So with expressive disorders, they have difficulty in expressing ideas or needs. So this can present a huge problem when a child is trying to get his or her basic needs met. If they can't tell that they are hungry, or they are wet, or they are cold, or feeling sick, they are going to display other unfavorable behaviors until they are able to identify what they need. While receptive, disorders include having difficulty in understanding what others are saying. They have difficulties following directions or understanding what is expected of them. And the last one, sometimes individuals may have mixed language disorders, which involve a mix of expressive and receptive difficulties. So, expressive language strategies. How can we, or what are the things that we do if our students have expressive language disorder? First, we create opportunities for the child to interact with peers. Although many of these great teaching strategies to use for all the children, there are specifically geared towards students with expressive language disorders. So we can pair children to share stories of what they did on a weekend and have them report it to the class. Accept all children's responses. Or it can be a model full sentence responses when you are with one-to-one instruction. And we can create a safe environment for all the children. Of course, students or children should feel comfortable and confident if they are with a peer, or they are in a classroom, or they are with certain groups. To improve their vocabulary, we need to build a word wall where they can refer to every time they want to speak or they want to write. We need to allow time for the child to process the question and formulate an answer. This one is very important, especially with if you are a teacher, because the main problem that teachers are facing now on the comprehension, student comprehension of the questions or instructions that are given to them, it's because we don't allow thinking time for our children or for our students to process the question, understand it, and to formulate an answer. So if you are a teacher, of course, you need to give your students time to think, 1 or 2 minutes. If you are a mother and you are having a child who have expressive language disorder, you need to give them time to understand what you are asking, or you need to let them understand what the instructions are. And if you want answers from them, if you want responses from them, you need to make sure that you give them time to formulate their answers or responses. Another strategy is you need to ask questions beginning with WH words like who, when, and why, rather than just yes or no questions. Why is it important? Because they need to answer your questions in full sentences for them to develop their articulation. The next one is we need to model sentences by repeating the child's message in a correct form. So example, if the child would say, "Miss, bathroom, please." So that one is not a complete sentence. You need to tell them, "Miss, I need to go to the bathroom." Or, "Miss, can I go to the bathroom, please?" Next one, prompt the child to use expressive language strategies and skills following the specific recommendations of the speech language pathologist. This one is, we need to be having a list of these speech language pathologist recommendations. Then prompt answers by giving choices. So if, since these expressive language disorders could not formulate their own ideas or are having difficulties in expressing their ideas, you need to give them prompts or hints on what to say. Then you can also add to the child's message by paraphrasing or expanding on it. So you can say, as you were saying this and that, or I think you're saying that. Example, let's say, Mommy, I'm angry because this boy hit me. Or, Mommy, I'm angry because because he hit. So it's not complete. So you're going to paraphrase what he said. You mean you're angry because he hit you. So you are giving the complete sentence. Now we have the second one, the second type of language disorder is receptive language disorder. It refers to our ability to receive information. This may cause great frustration because you could not understand what other people is saying because you are not able to receive the information properly. So students with language disorders may struggle with understanding what is spoken to them, comprehending what they read. So they may have difficulty with complicated sentence structure and unfamiliar vocabulary. So what can we do to help these receptive language disorder students? So signal the teacher when directions have not been understood. So you need to make sure that every instruction that you give to your child or to your students, you need to make sure that it is being cleared and understood, because it will be it would be your frustration if you could not see the expectations that you wanted from your child or from your students. Ask for repetition of directions. For teachers, this is very important for you to know that they understood the instructions. You need to make sure to ask students to repeat what you what you wanted them to do. So it means you are assessing if they had understood your instructions. Then ask for clarification of directions. So we should not assume that everything is cleared, everything is understood. So what we need to do is to clarify if everything is clear and understood. Sit close to the teacher and the whiteboard. So if the student is, if you know that this student is having receptive language disorder, you need to make sure that the student is sitting next to the teacher or next to the whiteboard. Or if the instruction is given as a whole class, you need to make sure to ask the student when the rest of the class are dispersed for their task, you need to take that student closer to you and repeat the instructions. And then, of course, sit in a quiet place if you are giving instructions. Build a word wall again. This is very, building word wall is a very tried and tested strategy already, when it especially with the lower primary, but even with the higher primary, they also refer to the word wall when they write and when they say. If you get used to letting them point out the words or look for the words that they wanted to use on the word wall, until the end of the year, they are going to be looking at your word wall. Review previously learned material. Review is very important because repetition for this type of disorder is relevant, is necessary. So connect new vocabulary or information with that previously learned. So accessing their prior knowledge on different vocabularies is important as well. Use direct requests. So please close the window instead of it's cold in here. So they could not interpret what you're trying to say if you don't give them the direct instruction or direct request. Give directions in time ordered sequence, in a time ordered sequence. So first, so you need to specify what they need to do first, the next, then finally. And pair direction with gestures or visual cues. This is also important. And reduce visual distractions. So for these disorders, of course, lots of visual distractions is not beneficial to them because they will be distracted with different visual aids that you have in the classroom. So when we are in classrooms, it is necessary that each displays that you have is either interactive or useful for the students. Another one, gain students' attention before giving directions or instructions. So you will not just throw instructions away without making sure that your students or your children are listening to you. Use a phrase or visual prompt before giving directions or instructions. And of course, you need to speak clearly and stress keywords in a sentence. Provide additional response time. So if you know that they are having difficulty in comprehending with your instructions or with your lesson, you need to give them time to digest all of those. And avoid asking the child to listen and write simultaneously. So they could not multitask. So they need to listen first, then they do the task, right? And you should not be talking at all. So only one task at a time. Use visual aids such as pictures, diagrams, graphs, or written keywords. These strategies are really useful when it comes to, it's not only the those with speech and language impairments, but with all the, especially with the lower primary students and KG students, of course. Now, the next one is pragmatic language disorder. So this one is the mixed one. So pragmatic language disorders refers to the appropriate use of language in social context. Students with language disorders may have trouble with language-based social interactions, so they could not interact with others. Characteristics may include difficulty interacting with peers or adults, violates conversational rules, has limited eye contact, and interrupts frequently. So what are the strategies that we can use when there are students who, or we have children who have pragmatic language disorders? First, practice appropriate body language. So since they could not digest what you're saying and they don't know how to interact with others, they could not express their ideas properly. So body language is necessary. Make facial expressions and ask students to tell you how they think you feel. So they are more visual, your body language and your facial expressions. Teach conversational skills in the classroom. This one is very important as well. So for English teachers especially, this is part, this should be part of the daily routine. Also, what are those components of conversational skills? Taking turns or turn taking, recognizing and responding to a topic, ensuring clarity of your part of the conversation, requesting clarification, topic transitions, and terminating a topic. So students must be explicitly taught with these skills. Another strategy is start with short conversation on one topic. Example, the daily conversational ideas like buying something from the canteen. So how much is this potato chips, please? If they're going to ask with, they are going to ask the one who is in charge of the canteen. There is a strategy in listening and speaking. It's called audiolingual strategy, where the teacher is going to show conversation between different situations. It can be in a restaurant. It can be in supermarket. It can be with their friends, or it can be with their brothers and sisters. Then you need to provide additional cues if the student does not respond. So it should be gestures and facial expressions. Then we can also provide the students with time to process information. Another strategy, the same thing as with the other disorders. So keep the conversation going by asking questions. So since these students have difficulty in expressing their ideas, you need to help them generate their ideas through your questions. And you can also use questions, yes or no questions. And you need to encourage the students to listen to others as they speak. So I'm almost done. Cognitive and academic characteristics with these speech and language disorders. So problems occur across the entire range of cognitive abilities. Problems may affect a student's learning, of course, and it is having a high risk of reading difficulties for students with speech and language delays. Students' social and emotional characteristics. Because they could not express their ideas, students may have low self-esteem, students may experience social isolation, and students may develop behavior problem. If you remember what I had mentioned before, when they could not express their ideas, they may turn into aggressive behaviors. So how can we assess these types of disorders? So we have formal tests of articulation, we have spontaneous language samples, developmental history, examination of mouth, teeth, and palate. For language assessments, we can have formal and informal assessments, sample of students' written schoolwork, observations, precautions necessary when assessing students whose first language is not English. For early childhood education, most critical time of speech for speech and language development. And of course, early intervention is very important. And services may occur through a pull-out model or in the context of a preschool or kindergarten setting. For elementary and secondary education, so most students spend the majority of the day in regular classrooms. Indirect services are provided to teachers, so where counselors and interventionists come to observe and provide help to the teachers. Direct services are provided to students, so wherein pull-outs of students with disorders are regular with the counselors and the interventionists, and inclusive practices should be standard. So since there are students who have disorders in your classroom, though they are in the mainstream classroom, there should be, the teacher needs to be trained as well to do inclusive learning. Collaboration between teacher and therapist is essential, of course with the parents as well. So here are the example of communications and technology that we can use if there are students with speech and language disorders. We have augmentative and alternative communication. So unaided, which is the sign language; aided, which depends on equipments or materials. Like the examples that were shown by Ma'am Lilibeth before when they went to Brunei, I think. Yeah, they have all those equipments and those materials. So we have communication boards, we have computer with speech processors, and we have word prediction softwares. So there are issues which affect this field. The issue in identifying and addressing speech and language disorders in a multicultural society. So if you are in an international school, probably this will be an issue. It is also an issue in identifying and working with students with central auditory processing disorder. So what would be our role as a teacher? So we consult or collaborate with speech language pathologists. So we are not in fact speech pathologists. However, we are going to be working with them. Some of you, depending on the type of program you are in, will work with them very closely. It is important to build effective collaborative relationships with the speech language pathologists. Talk about how you can help practice the skills they are learning during therapy sessions. So the special education teacher may work on on child's goals throughout the week, in addition to the child meeting with the SLP. So we need to ensure that the classroom accommodations are followed. All additional responsibilities of a classroom teachers should be done as well. So instructional strategies. I think it is important, no matter which child you are working with or what type of disability they have, it is imperative that you always assume competence. Even when they can't get a single word out, their behavior is at its worst, they have potential to do amazing things. As We as teachers must act as investigators to identify the way they learn best, so we can support them and will help them reach their full ability. One of the strategies I want to remember when it comes to reading is that our children with speech or language disorders, literacy is vital. They need hear and practice they need to hear and practice with fluent reading and speaking sounds like. Uh, we need to model it daily through choral or paired reading, through readers' theater. Give them also opportunity to be exposed to it in a safe, fun, and engaging ways. So these are additional uh, strategies that you can use in your classroom. And that is the end of my report. I hope you were able to uh, learn something from my report. I don't know if it's long. It's quite long. Let's see. Um, if you have any questions, please feel free to message in the group, or I am listening in this lesson. Actually, I was not able to, but I could not interact freely. So if there are any questions, you can raise your hand or you can start asking right now. And thank you all for listening and for your time.